Thank you for staying with us. And right now we get into our big stories. And two major issues we're going to be contemplating. One has to do with the EIU's latest report on what Ghana can look forward to ahead of election 2024. And we're also going to be looking at the e-levy, which may not see the light of day on the 1st of May, as per what we hear. That motion filed at the Apex Court by Mahama Yariga Okujato Ablakwa, and of course minority leader as well. We'll be giving you details of these, but we're joined by our guests who will be helping us dilate on these all-important matters. We have Evans Nimako of the NPP, Director of Research and Elections with the NPP. We also have Dr. Kwapong, Democracy Fellow at the CDD. Gentlemen, a very good morning to you.
Good morning to you too.
I also see Dr. Kobi Mensah. Good morning, Doc.
Good morning. How are you?
I am very well. It's been what? A few months since our last.
Yeah, it's been. Yeah, great to see you, Evans. And hello, John.
Hello, Kobi.
Of course, Dr. Kobi Mensah as well is.
You're becoming the true philosopher.
I'm sure they're referring to your fro and your beard, your Wole Shoyinka, like,
you know?
Right. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining. And Dr. Kobi Mensah is a lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School. I would take your initial reactions to the EIU's latest report, 2022 report. We've heard so many things. At a point, the NDC poo-pooed the report, but then they accepted, some others have accepted it, saying this bodes well for our party. It means that by hook or crook, the NPP will lose in 2024. But the NPP side has also said no. It rather points to the fact that we'll win despite the EIU's forecast, especially because the NDC is looking as though it is still going to put Mahama forward. I'll start with you, Dr. Kobi Mensah. What is your reading of this? Because the EIU has got it right in the past. It has also got it wrong in some instances. What's your reading?
Thank you for having me. First of all, I think that the EIU report, frankly, is very weak in its assumptions because you don't even get opportunity to understand the basis that they used for their, assertions, for example. Obviously, when you read it, it says that the MPP, because of sluggish growth, and then they refer to governance issues, they refer to low industrialization, they refer to these issues as prompting anti-government sentiment. As a result, the MPP will lose the election. I mean, frankly, there's nothing insight from this particular position. We know that in Ghana, most of the time in the 8 years, people have actually turned the other side. And the reasons why they would turn the other side is non-delivery, according to the people. And so they would change government. So there's no insight in that. Now, I think that it also suggests that although they've proclaimed the NDC winning, they would win, but then with a fresh candidate. Of course, without any merit in terms of what they think the candidate is not suitable. I mean, if you look at the last election, from 2016 and 2020, Mahama had a very huge jump in the votes. And so if you actually make a proclamation that, NDC would win, but with fresh candidate, on what basis are you actually saying that? It doesn't actually make clear in that. And the point is that it's not for a taking that someone, because they've been in government for 8 years, they will lose the election. That is not for a taking. If you look at our system, any party that has come on to win the election after the 8 years of the incumbent have worked for it. They have really worked for it. So if you just sit in London and then make a proclamation of that sort, I think it's very, very weak. And I rather wanted them to actually declare that it was an opinion that they were expressing, and not even a popular opinion, but an opinion that they were expressing because of the language that they used to say NDC would try or should try to revitalize. I mean, if it's any insight at all in terms of research, when they talk about their baseline forecast, if it's a forecast, you must have a certain basis to actually make that proclamation or to make that statement. But not to say that they would try. That completely suggests to me someone's opinion. And if that is the opinion, you have to actually make it clear. Of course, there's nothing wrong with expressing your opinion, but you have to make it clear and bring the justification before we can actually accept that this is a legitimate position, or this is a compelling position for us to accept as logical. But it doesn't. So I think that it is really weak. And I think perhaps they probably could have done a very good job, going into this particular, report.
Thank you for that initial premise, Dr. Kobi Mensah. Let me come to Dr. Kwapong briefly on that as well. Dr. Mensah terms it as weak, and in fact, that the analysis is poor. What is your reaction? Is your reading the same?
I just as Dr. Kobi Mensah said, I would be curious as to the basis for that assertion, right? That whilst the NDC has prospects, they expect that they would rethink who the flag bearer is. The other thing too is this is a report from February 2021. So I'll be curious to know the assumptions that fueled that declaration in 2021. And I'm just wondering that between 2021 and 2022, have their basic assumptions that went into that declaration a year ago changed? And would, if they were to give another political outlook and another election watch, will they come to the same conclusion, or will they draw a very different conclusion? But I was reflecting on the report yesterday, and I was saying to myself, perhaps, and like I said, I don't have the benefit of their assumptions and what informed that declaration. But I was saying to myself, well, were they thinking of things like because of his loss in 2016 and a loss in 2020, and therefore, in their own estimation, two subsequent losses therefore should mean that a different candidate. But at the same time, if you look at the former president's performance in the 2016 election compared to the 2020 election and the net gain in votes, then you would also say to yourself, this is not a candidate that one would consider weak. And therefore, again, you would wonder why or what is really informing EIU's position. But then again, like I said, this is a report from February 2021. A year later, I'll be curious to know if they still hold on to that assertion or whether their assumptions have changed based on their reading of political and economic events that have happened over the last year.
Is that to say, Dr. Kwapong, from where you said that both the MPP and the NDC, who have been jumping all over the place on the back of this report, should hasten slowly and maybe take all of this with a pinch of salt?
Yes, that is what I would say. For whatever it is worth. I mean, I understand the politics of these things, right? If you are MPP and a report is saying the NDC has better prospects if they change their presidential candidate, you would be sort of excited about the prospect that then we want him to win because then it looks like we can quote unquote easily beat him. If you are an internal candidate who wants to contest in the NPP primaries, you might walk away saying to yourself, hey, NDC primary voters, even look at what this report is saying, perhaps you need to rethink, et cetera, et cetera. But I think at the end of the day, for whatever is worth, just like you said, I think we need to take it with a pinch of salt.
Let me come to Evans Nimako on this beat. And your party has been reacting. Yawo Abena-Asamoah, Communications Director, has spoken. We've heard from the NDC's end as well. I heard Yawo Abena-Asamoah, for example, say that by hook or crook, you would win in 2024, regardless of what the EIU is saying. I want your reactions to that, but I also want you to weave in the fact that we have an unwritten rule, maybe by the people of Ghana, that after 8 years, at least as pertains in our Fourth Republic, you leave and another party comes through. How do you react to what the EIU is saying, how your communications team has reacted, and the templates that we have? 8 years, and you are gone.
Thank you very much for having me. I think the philosophers have spoken. And I don't think, and I don't accept that we have any unwritten template. I think that the Fourth Republic Constitution has been very successful to this end. If you check the records in 2008,
Right.
the Patriotic Party came very close. Like the first round, we were leading over 102,000 votes, except that the runoff and then time changed the dynamics. And so, yes, no two elections are the same.
Right.
And so, if you check the EIU, this is the manner with which they always come out with their reports. They hardly will give you the full assumption, because if you assess their report, it's not only on political issues, there are other considerations. So, I have said earlier that as a party, we take it as an advice.
Okay.
To some, it may be positive, to others, it may not. And I'm saying that when the new Patriotic Party won in 2016 and won in 2020, it wasn't because the EIU had published a report, but it was because the new Patriotic Party took up a strategy, a system that got closer to the people with enhanced communication strategies in place. We reached out, and the good people saw enough as an alternative that is viable to bring development, to bring a system that will transform the position of Ghana to another level. And so that is exactly what we'll be doing, and we are not resting. And I've said also that, yes, Dr. Kapon has also mentioned it. This is a report that is coming from 2021. And if you're in 2022, or you'll be going to elections in 2024, December 7, the circumstances definitely will never going to be the same. And so we need to see the party is supporting the government fully to develop system that is collective. You'll be kidding yourself not to look at issues beyond the borders of Ghana. It's unfortunate, just as the whole world was coming out of the difficult situation of COVID-19, other issue of war in Russia and Ukraine is having an effect on all economies. So I appreciate the difficulties we are going through, and we are still watching the dynamics. But for EIU, I'm not surprised with the report they put out. I am not, but I'm also not surprised about NDC's position. They've never accepted any report or any finding that put them in event of the day. Is the majority of Ghanaians over.
But to be fair, Evans Nimako, when your party, the MPP, when there are such reports that put you in a bad light, you don't accept it either. I don't recall any report that your party has accepted. In this instance, I was just pointing to your communications director, Yabwabena Samoa, and how he has also given, I don't want to call it this, but that's the word that comes, a spin. Just as the NDC members, when I listen to Felix Kwachio-Fosu and others, are also giving it a spin to favor themselves. So I don't see where you're going with that point.
What YB has said is no different from what I'm saying. I'm saying that this is a report that has come up. We take it as an advice. We take steps as a party, notwithstanding the challenges we find ourselves as a country, to do what is needful. And I'm saying that winning election is not dependent only on the report of the EIU. And I said that when we had won in 2016 and 2020, it wasn't because EIU had produced report. Going into elections, Dr. Komensa has said, they produce report is to advise you on how to align your strategies. And I'm saying that come December 2024, the good people of Ghana will see and will decide whether the alternative, as in NDC, is empty or not, whether they will still see the new Patriotic Party as a viable government to continue with its developmental agenda or otherwise. And so for us, we are not really throwing away what they put out. Yes, we may disagree with portions, but I'm saying that we're taking it as an advice. We are doing our internal arrangement as in electing our party officers. When we are done, we see whether the party is in good shape to reach out, to communicate, develop the necessary strategies to uplift Ghana from where we are.
Okay.
And then the decision will be on the majority of Ghanaians.
Right. Before I move on to the other guests, two quick questions for you. The first one, so does that mean that by and large, you're saying that some portions you may disagree with, but does that mean that by and large, you subscribe to this report? You accept its findings?
I said that when we are giving advice, take it in good faith. As and when it will be useful to you, you apply them. And I'm saying that it is not only what to come from EIU, the New Patriotic Party has these strategies. We take solid feedback, be it good or negative. And as a party, we are.
I'm just asking whether you accept. I get the point you're making. I get the point you're making, Mr. Nimako, but I just want to find out. So, do you accept? Because the report is by and large saying that you will lose in 2024. I'm just asking, do you accept this?
I've said consistently that we will go into the December 7, 2024 elections and we come out victorious. The New Patriotic Party is viable party, government in all shapes and forms compared with the NDC as alternative. And I don't think the good people of Ghana will give the NDC mandate. That is why I disagree with you that we have a certain unwritten. No two elections are the same, and the dynamics that will play out in 2024 will give the New Patriotic Party victory.
Okay, my final bit to you for now, before I bring in Dr. Kobimenta and Dr. Kwapong. So, you look at the hydra-headed problems they point to, three major ones. They point to the fact that there has been dissatisfaction with the economic situation of the country. They paint the picture that there has been a slow pace of development, especially infrastructure development. And they also point to the fact that not enough has been done to stem the tide of corruption. When you look at the economic situation, the economists and those in the agri sector and others have also profited. In fact, if you look at the data coming from the international economic institutions, that next year, 2023, could be worse. When you look at all of this put together and you consider the points we're looking at, do you feel things are going to change that fundamentally? I'm just going back to the point you made that things can change between now and election day. Do you feel things are going to change that much ahead of election 2024 to put your party, the MPP, in a good stead as you go toe-to-toe with the NDC and other parties? Is Mr. Nimako still with us?
I'll say that in life, when you are confronted with problems, with challenge. Hello?
Yes, I can hear you. Please go ahead. I can hear you.
Hello? Yes. I mean, to respond to your question, in life, when you are confronted with challenges, you don't sit, you don't sleep. You look at viable solutions and involve doing proper consultations, aligning minds and energies that will address these challenges you have. It's important that as a government, you provide jobs for your people. You provide jobs for your hands that leaves institutions and are of major age to be engaged and work to transform and bring development to your country. So issues of employment has always been on the table anytime the government has to move the country to another level. It is not going to change. Issue of corruption lies in our mouth. And I can refer you to Mr. Domlovo before he even left the Auditor General, how he mentioned the support the government has given to these institutions that are responsible for fighting corruption. And so it's not just saying it in our mouth that the perception is high. You say it and it must be backed by data. As we speak, are we saying that Dr. Opuni, who is in court, should not be going to court because the government is not pushing the issue of corruption, the government is not fighting it? I don't think that is the point. Slow pace of development. World all over. And the data that because of COVID, supply chain was affected hugely. And Ghana is not an exception. And so when we are coming out of this situation, and you still want to tell me that because of the challenges the world is going through, in which Ghana is an exception, development will be jumping at that level. And you can see, even where you sit, some years back, the road in front of your office did not used to be like this. And the government is not sitting, the government is taking steps to overcome this challenge. That is why, for me, the development of collective system that will bring all on board to support what has to be done to develop Ghana is key. And we must all come on board and stop the doomsayers.
All right, let me bring in Dr. Kobi Mensah. I don't know what your reading is, but we've heard from Yawabena Samoa, who has been saying that no country is immune to what has happened across the world in the last 2+ years. First of all, COVID-19, that scourge, and then the Ukraine-Russia standoff, if you like. But in the midst of all of that, our economy is not doing well. People are reacting to that. They've showed their dissatisfaction in respect of that, in respect of the slow pace of development, and also in respect of that gargantuan problem, corruption. Listening to Evans Nimako, do you feel that the MPP, in fact, is taking the sort of counsel that he says, which could make them break the 8? What is your take?
Well, thank you for that. I think, yes, Evans had specifically stated that they would take it as an advice and then prepare. Obviously, when it comes to their acceptance of the situation on the ground, clearly every political party will pick and choose, how they analyze issues. And no one is doubtful, or no one is actually doubting that indeed, these realities, i.e. COVID, as well as, the war in Ukraine, has an impact. In fact, if you say that, then of course, you're not, living in a very real world. But of course, we would also refer the NPP and, the kind of, assertions they make, and compare that to the times of, Professor Mills, obviously, John Mahama. They also had situations. Obviously, there was a credit crunch in 2008 onwards. So whenever NDC, MPP is making comparisons and then comparing, the economy of the NDC era to them, they don't make mention of credit crunch. Credit crunch was absolutely terrible. The British economy was down. The American economy, the German economy was down. So many other economies were down. I particularly was affected. In credit crunch, I was, my company actually pulled off, and therefore we had to, look for a new job, in England. Now, obviously, in President Mahama's era, you had, Ebola, you had, Doomsor, etc. And so when you're making the comparisons in terms of economic performances, they rather will cite, problems that are actually affecting them today without citing problems that are affected previous governments, but make a point that they have actually performed better. Of course, I am not an economist to actually check the numbers and say whether they don't or not. But the point is that when you have said prior to COVID that you have had a very robust economy, you wouldn't expect a deterioration within a very short period. And that is exactly what has happened to us. And by the way, we know that during the COVID period, most countries, including our country, had actually received support from IMF, from World Banks, from global institution, multinational, development partners, for example. Exactly. Now we haven't actually had an account, and so it speaks to good governance. For example, a lot of institutions have questioned, transparency. We've had terrible, relationship with the media. These issues are not COVID affected, are not COVID, related, are not, Ukraine related. So yes, I can understand a part of the economy has been affected by these. But what about the social issues, the other issues that are not, within the realms of these particular realities? What is the government answer to that? And that is why they will talk about, governance issues. They will talk about corruption issues, because there have been a lot of references to corruption, which we have seen the government not pursuing, frankly. And so when you're painting the picture, I think it is fair to the people to let the people understand where the difficulties are and where you could have performed or you could have delivered and haven't delivered. And then be candid to admit that indeed you haven't actually delivered on these areas. And then give us a roadmap, how these areas are going to be solved. Currently, we're saying that it looks like there is doom solved. The government keeps rejecting that there is no doom solved, but people are experiencing it. Where is the transparency? Is there doom solved or not? Must people prepare for the worst? You have to be clear in your communication rather than trying to propagate things that aren't, there. So for me, yes, I accept Evans's position that indeed the economy had actually taken a bashing as a result of COVID, as a result of Ukraine, no doubt about it. But the other issues that we expect government to be forward-looking with us, to be forthright with us, we haven't actually had it so. And so people have a cause to be concerned. And these are some of the points that we're actually making. And then, of course, the idea that you would criticize someone who, again, also experienced, some of these difficulties. But then, in your case, you pick and choose and say, you have performed better, as if nothing happened in their era. I think that is very unfair, and that is disingenuous.
The report also says that there is a great likelihood that the NDC could win or that the NPP would lose in 2024. But there's a caveat. And the caveat is that the NDC to win would have to wean itself of a certain John Dramani Mahama, that he is not a viable candidate. What is your take on that?
I think that session is very weak because, as we all know, and John actually pointed out the performance of the NDC as a candidate in 2016 and 2020 election. There's a huge, jump from that particular, two performances. And so when you're making an assertion, you would expect to put it in context. I mean, if you have seen a dwindled performance, then you would actually argue that perhaps it's not a viable candidate, it's not electable. This is a huge, performance, given the two elections. So on what basis would you actually assume that? Granted that perhaps you have actually spoken to people and there's a popular sway of opinion that they have to be, the former president has to be changed. Then, of course, we expect you to give us the figures. For example, if you can actually point to a popular opinion that says that yes, X number of within NDC, they would want to see a new candidate. Then you've got to give us the numbers and you've got to let us see the evidences of your methodology. But then you cannot, come out with your own opinion and say that you would expect them to inject a fresh candidate without any solid, basis for that. I think that is completely, weak, so to speak. I would expect a very robust, debate, a very robust argument, supporting that position, but I don't see that.
All right, Dr. Kwapong, same question to you. Is Mahama viable for the NDC? He polled some 6.5 million votes in the last election. And barring, if he is not, where would the NDC go? Who else would be viable for them at a time like this? Who could go toe-to-toe with the sort of people that we have the premonition will be contesting on the side of the MPP, the likes of Alan Chamanting, the likes of Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, among others?
I don't think I accept the premise that the former president, John Dramani Mahama, is not a viable candidate for the NDC going into the 2024 election. One of the things that I looked at going into the 2016 election, one of the key indicators that I looked at was the trajectory of his approval rating as president, for example. So if you look at round 6 of the Afrobarometer report, which occurred during his tenure in office, his approval rating hovered around the mid 30s. I think it was about 34%. But by the time CDD Ghana did the first pre-election survey in July 2016, his approval rating was around 47, 48%. And then by the time they did the October pre-election survey in 2016, his approval rating had reached about 53. For the first time, he had broken the 50% mark. Yes, I don't think there was enough time to keep stemming some of those losses and the challenges that his government had faced, therefore leading up to the loss in 2016.
Right.
I also think that if you look at some of the key surveys, for example, from the National Commission for Civic
Dr.
Education.
Kwapong, just hold for me. Just hold for me briefly. Let me do this. Sami Gyamfi is Director of Communications with the NDC. Sami Gyamfi, a very good morning to you. Hello. Do we have Sami Gyamfi on the line?
Yes, I'm on the line.
Okay, Sami, just give me a minute. I want to conclude with a quick remark from Dr. Kwapong, and I'll be with you in just about a minute, if you will oblige me.
Sure.
All right, thank you very much. Dr. Kwapong, please go ahead.
Right, so if you look at the NCC and some of the other pre-election surveys in 2016, compared to 2020, I always say that the incumbent in 2016 going into re-election faced a much more difficult, challenging political landscape than what some of these surveys and opinion polls were showing in 2020. But at the same time, again, if you look at his performance in the 2020 election, I don't see why anybody would describe him as not being a viable candidate for the NDC. I don't know who is going to sort of throw in their hat in the NDC primary when the time actually comes around.
Okay.
But I don't accept that premise that he's not a viable candidate for the NDC for 2024.
Thank you, Dr. Kwapong. Just hold for me. Sami, so Director of Communications with the NDC, Sami Gyamfi, joins the conversation. First off, the EIU has got it wrong sometimes, and it has got it right sometimes. In respect of this specific report, how do you take it? Do you accept the findings of the EIU's report?
Well, their findings, specifically their baseline forecast for the 2024 general elections, aligns with our own expectations and analysis of the situation in the country as far as the 2024 general election is concerned. So it doesn't come as a surprise to us at all that Ghanaians are disillusioned and disenchanted with the mismanagement of the economy by the Akufo-Addo Bawumia administration in the last 5 years. They are tired of their corruption, the nepotism, the waste of the public purse, the state of lawlessness and exclusivity, and bad governance in our country, and are yearning for a change. And so we know that come 7 December 2024, the NDC will be victorious in the presidential and parliamentary elections. And this prediction by EIU aligns with that expectation of the party. It hasn't come as a surprise to us at all. Yes, the EIU has in time past gotten some of their predictions wrong, but in most cases they've had their predictions right as far as Ghana is concerned.
Does that mean, Sami Gyamfi, that you subscribe to this report, that you think that weighing it, looking at the strengths and the weaknesses, you think by and large it's a report that is representative of what would or could happen in 2024?
Yeah, like I said, it's a report that reflects or corroborates our own expectations and assessments of the situation on the ground. And so my answer to your question is yes, it reflects the general political climate in Ghana today. Ghanaians are yearning for change. Ghanaians are yearning for the return of the NDC because they know that it is only under an NDC government that they will see true development and progress again. And so we agree with their baseline forecast for the 2024 elections. In time past, we have disagreed with some of their predictions, even though they've been vindicated at the end of the day, like it happened in 2016 and 2020. So they are a reputable political risk analyst organization that we respect. We are going through the report. Whatever useful lessons that we need to draw from it, we shall do so. And but let me make the point that we are not going to be complacent at all because EIU has predicted victory for us. We are putting our destiny in our own hands, and we're going to work hard to make sure that we win the 2024 election resoundingly.
Right. Do you then also accept the report, because it's a double-edged sword? It says the MPP likely will slip out of power and you likely will take over, but not with President or former President Mahama. How do you react to that?
That is false, and that is a misreporting.
So Sammy, let me just get this clear. I'll let you go on, but let me get it clear. You think it's okay when the report says that based on the economic hardship, poor development, and corruption, this government will slip out of power? But when it adds the preamble that you need someone apart from Mahama, that one is false?
I am saying that what you are saying is false, not what EIU has said, because what you are saying is not contained in the EIU report.
But it says that you would need a candidate other than.
Can you allow me?
Okay, so
there is
go on.
Paragraph contained in the EIU report we are discussing that says that the NDC cannot win power with President Mahama. There is no such caveat. There are no such ifs or buts or conditions to the baseline forecast of the EIU for the 2024 elections. And what you just said, what you just asked me, is a misreporting by the Ghanaian media, because I have taken time to read the report. And in no part of that report did the EIU say that the NDC running with President Mahama as flag bearer for the 2024 elections is a no, we can't win.
Okay, so let me read out to you.
Read the portion,
it is actually on the screen, but let me read this to you and see how you will interpret it.
I'm coming to that, because I know what.
So can I do the reading and you just respond to it, please? Is that possible?
Sure.
All right. So it says the next parliamentary and presidential elections are due in 2024 under constitutionally mandated term limits. As we know, the incumbent president, Mr. Akufo-Addo, cannot run for a third term. The former president, John Mahama, is reportedly considering running again, but we expect the opposition NDC to try to revitalize its prospects with a fresh candidate. How do you assess that? Is that a departure from what I'm saying?
What you read, what is in it that says that the NDC cannot win power with President Mahama?
It says you should come out with they expect you to come out with a fresh candidate.
First of all, when you read their baseline forecast, which is the foundation of their prediction, they've predicted that the MPP will lose power to the NDC. And that is without any ifs or buts or conditions. It is unconditional. They are saying that power will change.
The condition, Sammy, is that you need a fresh candidate.
Conclude what I'm saying, because you keep cutting in. Let me just conclude the point I'm making. But when you come to what you just read to us, they are saying that they expect, it's an expectation, they expect the NDC to revitalize. That is a word. Revitalize its prospect by fielding a fresh candidate. What they are basically saying is that, look, we have found that the MPP will lose power in 2024. But we think the NDC will do better with a fresh candidate than with President Mahama. That is the right interpretation of what they have said. And that is not the same as saying that the EIU has predicted that John Mahama cannot win power for the NDC, or the NDC cannot win power if it runs with John Mahama. The two are not the same. Their forecast, their baseline forecast is that power will change and the MPP will lose to the NDC. And that is without any conditions. They have only said that they expect us to revitalize our prospects so that we can do better in that election with a fresh candidate. A prediction or a suggestion or an expectation we disagree with, because as I've already explained to you, the NDC will win the 2024 election regardless of who leads the party.
Okay.
And also, as I have explained on other platforms, John Mahama, in my humble opinion, is our surest bet, relative to winning 2024. He got 1.5 million votes, if more, in 2020 than he got in 2016.
Right.
And therefore, it cannot be true that with John Mahama, the NDC will be disadvantaged.
All right. So it's interesting that you suppose that, what you're saying is the right one and that everyone else is giving it a twist. But let's move on from there. So you feel, Sammy, that as far as the EIU's report stating that to revitalize your prospects, you may want to consider changing the representative of the party, aka the flag bearer, that will have no consequence on your electoral fortunes in 2024, as per this report?
I'm saying that is an expectation of the EIU, a suggestion they have made for our consideration. I do not subscribe to that suggestion because I think the NDC will have a better chance at winning the 2024 election if it runs with John Dramani Mahama. Currently, there is nobody in the NDC who stands a better chance of winning the 2024 election for the NDC than John Dramani Mahama, a man who won 1.5 million votes more than he did in 2016. For God's sake, the man won over 6.5 million votes in the 2020 elections with all the vote buying, with all the abuse of incumbency that we saw the ruling government deploy in the 2020 elections. And so I totally disagree with that suggestion from the IU that our prospects of winning 2024 will be revitalized. I think that our prospects would rather be destroyed if we make the mistake of changing President Mahama. And that is a position that the rank and file of our party, and I dare say majority of Ghanaians, hold. Because on whose track record will we be prosecuting the 2024 campaign? John Dramani Mahama's track record. And who better to lead that campaign than the man who is responsible for that track record? You understand? And so we disagree with that suggestion, but that is not the same as the position that some Ghanaian media houses, have taken on this particular suggestion by the EIU. And the report they have put out there, that the EIU is saying that the NDC cannot win with John Mahama. They did not say so in their report, and there is no portion of this report that you can read to me that says so.
Sammy, let's move the conversation forward. I disagree with you, but let's move the conversation forward. We don't have to agree on everything. The next point, your counterpart on the MPP side, I'm talking about Yabwa Benasamwa, has said that we're not facing anything that the rest of the world is not facing. In terms of our economy, for example, we're grappling with COVID-19, the Russo-Ukrainian war. And so he says on the back of that, the MPP will do the right things, and come 2024, they'll beat you again. Put that side by side with the fact that pollster Ben Efson is saying that should the NDC lose in 2024, your party will literally implode. How do you react to these two?
Well,
and did Ben Efson get it right?
No, as for what Ben Efson is saying, I will not really pay attention to that because the NDC is not going to lose 2024, and so I don't want to discuss what he has put out.
He's a pollster. He's a pollster, and he's got, just like the EIU, he's got it right quite a number of times.
And he's saying that if we lose, our party will implode. I'm saying we are not going to lose. And so his prediction that our party will implode doesn't even come in. But the point I'm making, the point I want to make firstly has to do with what you claim Yabwa Biansamoah has said on your show, that the economy is doing badly because of COVID-19 and the Russian-Ukrainian war. Nothing could be far from the truth, because even before COVID-19, our economy was in a mess. And the country director of the World Bank to Ghana, Mr. Laporte, has said so, that even before COVID, our economy was in a very bad state. COVID only took advantage of the negative underlying conditions of our economy. Because before COVID-19, in 2019, the Ghana cedi had depreciated by 12.9%, almost 13%, the highest in recent time. And government had even constituted a team to investigate reasons why the cedi was depreciated. Coincidentally, ironically, it was COVID which rather slow down economic activity across the world, and helped the cedi to gain some stability. That is why in 2020, the cedi only depreciated by 3.8%, whereas it had depreciated by 13% in 2019. So you cannot blame COVID for the depreciation of the cedi. Again, before COVID, we had recorded a budget deficit of 7%. And that figure is contained in government's own documents, the documents they presented to the IMF for the $1 billion rapid credit facility. What that means is that even before COVID, we had been very reckless in our expenditures, and we had exceeded the allowable threshold of 5% deficit as provided for in the Fiscal Responsibility Act that this government itself passed even before COVID. Even before COVID, debt to GDP had hit 65%, and that is clearly unsustainable. So you cannot blame our economic woes on COVID when the evidence shows that even before COVID, our economy was in a bad position. Check what is accounting for the excruciating hardships Ghanaians are going through today. One major factor is inflation. And by inflation, I'm talking about food inflation, which is currently hovering around 19%, 20%. Why is the price of cassava going up? Why is the price of gari going up? The price of a bag of maize, kukunte, going up? Is it because of COVID-19? Definitely no. And you can't also blame that on a war that started 1 month, 3 weeks, or barely 2 months ago. Because even before that war, the price of building materials like cement, iron rods were already skyrocketed. And a ranking member for the MPP on the Parliament's Finance Committee, Honorable Kweku Kwase, had already called on Parliament to investigate why building prices were going up at such an astronomical rate. And that was before the Russian-Ukrainian war commenced. Before that war, which commenced on 24th February 2022, the price of a gallon of diesel and petrol had gone up by more than 100%, really, as compared to 2016, from 16 Ghana cedis a gallon to 33 Ghana cedis, even before the war began. And so government should stop making flimsy excuses for their own failings. We are in the current economic quagmire we find ourselves because of their excessive borrowing and reckless expenditures, particularly in 2020. That is what has accounted for this. And so blaming our economic woes, the hardships Ghanaians are going through on COVID-19 and a war that commenced only 2 months ago will not wash. Ghanaians are discerning and they know better.
All right. Just to wrap on this, Sami, so I can let go of you and get to the other guests as well. And thank you so much, Dr. Kobi-Mensah, Dr. Kwapong, and Evans Nimako for holding for me. I have to let go of you, Sami, but I just want you to do this before you go. So the choice of a running mate has also come into the fray. Ben Efson says it will be crucial for you as a party, and it's important because some have forecast what could happen. So I just want to find out from you, what are the prospects of the NDC when it comes to a running mate? Very quickly.
Well, we have not gotten to that stage yet.
Right.
We are currently reorganizing the party.
We see former President Mahama going round a lot with Professor Dada Jane Opoku-Agyeman. Is that indication that you're going to stick with her?
We have not even chosen a flag bearer yet. And so the conversation about who is likely to be our running mate is respectfully very premature.
All right.
It's not something that I'm willing to discuss.
Sami Gyamfi, thank you so much for joining the conversation this morning.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Let me come immediately to Evans Nimako. Evans, thank you so much for holding patiently. I just wanted to digest a few issues from the end of the opposition as well. So when you hear Sami Gyamfi say things like they are going to win, come what may, in 2024, and that for them they are sticking to what the report says, that your party has become unpopular, you will lose out in 2024. How do you react to that?
Well, thank you. I think that everything that has to be said on the part of NDC is what Mr. Sami Gyamfi has communicated to the world. Their level of intolerance you've seen, when it comes to this time round, he will take part of the EIE reports and the other side he will ignore. I'm surprised that the leadership of NDC will not even allow internal democratic principles to reign. You know what? They all seem to be imposing Mr. Mahama on the party. I expected that for where he sits as the communications officer, will not show any sign of support to any of the prospective candidates who want to be their presidential candidate. In the light of what EIU has come out, I'm seeing whether the NDC will be bold enough to go for the Harney ticket, or they will go for Mr. Pabnado or they will go for Pedu Bunsu. But that is their own cup of tea. They are entitled to whatever they want to do. But for us as New Patriotic Party, we're saying that, yes, EIU will definitely come up with 10 reports. We are expecting that soon the CDD will also publish theirs. Dr. Mensah will continue with his critique and come out with his position on his views on how, for him, the data support Ghana must trend. But just to bring your mind to it, in 2020, Mr. Mahama did not obtain 6.5 million votes. He only made 6.2 million. It is Nanado Danko Kufuado who made 6.7. Yes, you see that John may have made some huge jump from where he came from in 2016. By looking at it, John, the president...
Does that jump scare the MPP? Does it scare the MPP, the jump that was made in 2020?
His own elections. That's why I'm telling you that no two elections for me are the same. And I'll only take it from Mr. Sami Jeff, who is not, in terms of electoral figures and the conduct, so astute. And so I'll give it to him. But I can assure you that the report of the EIU did not give the NDC too much of clean slate. It says that if they will be able to revitalize, then you won't take it. Is the NDC prepared to change Mr. Mahama or not? They are not going to change Mr. Mahama. From the conversations of all their officers, it looks like they are still imposing Mr. Mahama on them. For us in Patriotic Party, we are reorganized. And I'm saying that, yes, it appears difficult the world all over. Ghana needs to be on the drawing board. The perspective of NDC just about 2 months ago was for Ghana to go to IMF. When we were confronted with COVID, the decision, the policy direction of NDC, we all saw in Ghana.
Evans, it is interesting that you bring in this point, because guess what? The EIU itself is saying that Ghana will benefit, that it's probably our best option to go the way of the IMF. It's interesting you bring it, because the same report we are referencing says that it would do us well to go the way of the IMF. So why counter what the opposition is saying?
So for EIU, this is their alternative position. For us as New Patriotic Party supporting the Adodankwa government, think that we can have homegrown solution. And that's exactly what we are doing. And for the NDC, they will always disagree. If you are telling me today, the UK economy, the US economy is doing so well in the midst of COVID, the Italian economy is doing so well, and that Ghana should be the only odd one, then I'm surprised. But I'm saying that in all these challenges, the government of Adodankwa keeps on working, keeps on finding alternative solutions to the challenges that we are confronted with. And so if you are telling me that, and Dr. Mensah mentioned, that we seem to be experiencing a bit of doom so, which has been discounted by the Minister of Energy in the last week mid-press discussion. We are not, as a party, saying that we have the wholesome solution to all the problems. And so we continue to engage. And I'm saying that, yes, for EIU, for what they've been picking, it appears, and it may be genuine, that some Ghanaians are having it tough. And the government has not run away from this position that it is difficult. That is why the government keeps on providing solutions that will address our challenges that we are going through. And so for me, I'm telling you with all confidence in me, and saying again that it doesn't lie in Mr. Sami Jeff's mouth to say that they are winning. For us, it will be the decision of the good people of Ghana based on the quality work delivery by the Adodankwa Kufuor's government. We've seen Mr. Mahama. It is on that basis that EIU, for me, says that for his management of Ebola, for his management of the financial crunch we got ourselves into, he is not a better option for Ghana as a president anymore. And therefore, we are not going into the 2024 election, even if they are bringing Mr. Mahama, even if they are bringing Harry Dusu or Dr. Kwamna before, the New Patriotic Party will be formidable enough to reach out to the voter and make the number of votes that will put us in government.
Very quickly, Evans, before I let go of you, I'm wrapping with you. I just want to find out. I just want to bring in something else we're going to be discussing. So the e-levy, I'm looking at the Daily Statesman this morning saying e-levy saboteurs at work. We know of the situation where on May the 1st, it may not come off because of this new motion at the Supreme Court. Is that how you see it, that the NDC is trying to sabotage the e-levy? I just want your quick take on that before I let go of you.
They never supported it. For NDC, their members of parliament, they run helter-skelter. They've done all engagements with their session of support base not to accept e-levy as a means to internally mobilize resources to alleviate the challenges that we're going through as a country. On the part of government, the appreciation is different. We think that we cannot always go cap in hand for loan. And therefore, for us, it may be, as has been described by others, as necessary evil. We must embrace it. And I can appreciate. Nobody appreciates paying taxes. And we've had the occasion of discussing e-levy on your platform. I'm saying that it's not everybody who will be mandated to pay e-levy. It's for those who access the platform. And if you do so, you have to contribute a quota, a small percentage to support development of Ghana. I don't think it will be out of place. My brother, the mobile phone you use, there are pay apps, and it's not every one of them that you access. So yes, for us, we must embrace it. For the NDC, I'm not surprised, but also our advice that though they filed the application, by my prayers, will not succeed. Ghana will have to develop. It will need all of us to come on board to contribute our quota to ensure that we get out of our difficulty.
Right.
If we keep on going to the IMF,
right,
it means that our debt to GDP is...
I think that point is made, Mr. Nimako. Thank you so much for joining us for this very important conversation. We're grateful, sir, for your time.
Is that the way?
All right, that was Evans Nimako, Director of Research and Elections with the NPP. A quick take from Dr. Kobi Mensah and Dr. Kwapong as we wrap the conversation. So, EIU says, go to the IMF. We heard the response of Evans Nimako. Put that side by side with what you've heard from both Evans and Sami Gyamfi. This is for both of you. I'll start with Dr. Kobi Mensah.
I think I would actually defer conversations on whether we should go or not to my colleagues in finance.
Okay.
Obviously, if Dr. Kwapong has any idea on that, maybe he can prefer. But I would leave it to Professor Lord Mensah, Gachi, and co to actually answer that question.
Okay, so your quick take on the reactions from both Sami and Evans to wrap? These are the concluding comments.
But yes, when it comes to the report on Mahama, I think Sami was right. I mean, I have said that particular portion is an opinion, from from EIU, whether Mahama must be changed or not. It doesn't actually fall within the remit of the forecast, for example. And if it did, I mean, I would be surprised for them not to provide the reasons behind it. It is clearly an opinion that was actually stated, because if you say that you would expect them to try and revitalize, that does not come across as a research finding. So clearly, I agree that certainly is an opinion, but that is actually left to them alone. And with that opinion, you would expect a very solid, background, because opinions also have backgrounds. You have to actually demonstrate a compelling underpinnings, backing that particular opinion, but they didn't. So obviously, that is up to them.
Okay. Dr. Kwapong, to wrap the conversation off.
Well, I mean, I I'm not surprised at the take of the two representatives, one from from the MPP as well as from the NDC, in terms of their interpretation of the report and their takeaway of what the EIU report means. Yes, if no two elections are the same, as Mr. DeMarco rightly said, but we've also gotten into this cycle of 8 years since the Fourth Republic. And so come 2024, it will just be very interesting to see the dynamics of that election and what happens. Of course, if you look at current conditions, nobody would dispute the fact that the incumbent party, even though the president is term limited, nobody would dispute the fact that the incumbent party is in a very difficult and challenging situation. But election is still 2 years away. And so we'll see what the dynamics look like in 2023 when we enter into 2024. At the end of the day, in terms of the economic situations and the extent to which that can be blamed or not be blamed on external circumstances like the war or COVID, I think ultimately the voter is the one best positioned to make the final determination on that.
Okay.
And voters always vote on their bread and butter issues. It's the extent to which they feel it, regardless of the explanations you give.
Right.
Ultimately, the voters would make that decision come 2024 in terms of which of the competing narratives they buy into. But I think we are in 2022. 2 years is a long time in politics. And so we'll just keep watching, observing, and see what happens as we go along.
Well, we're grateful for your time this morning. Dr. Kwapon, of course, a Democracy and Development Fellow with the CDD. And of course, Dr. Kwame Mensah, lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School. Gentlemen, we're so grateful. Thank you for joining.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Right. We take a bit of a breather and return with the second leg of our big stories as we contemplate the e-levy and whether it will come to us on the 1st, considering the motion filed by the NDC at the Apex Court. Do stay. We'll be right back.